Hello there and welcome to my channel. I hope you are having a good day so far. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I wanted to do something a little bit different, and instead of showing you a time lapse of this painting, I wanted to go through it step by step with you, show you real time, the painting process, and just talk through it as we go. So let's jump right in. The first step I take with any painting is making sure I have a good sketch. You'll see that I have just a very rough sketch of what I'm going for in this painting off to the left-hand side of the actual canvas. And then I usually will do a light sketch just with pencil, nothing fancy, on the actual canvas or canvas paper itself. I want to make sure that I've got the general layout the way I want it. The composition. I'm not really looking to sketch out a lot of detail. And then with the paint, I mix up my colors first, at least the beginning colors. And in this first layer, I'm really looking at just laying down the basic colors and structure of the painting. So I use my palette knife quite a lot in the beginning to just block in the basic colors. The inspiration for this painting came from some photographs of a cross that is right outside our little village in Germany. It's at kind of the intersection or crossroads of the one road into the village. And on this particular morning, it was very misty, very overcast, gray, and there was a raven sitting on top of the cross. So my husband actually snapped a couple quick pictures of the raven. And then I went back later and took a few more pictures of the cross itself. So you'll see those images here. I never really used just one picture to turn into a painting. I will use a compilation of pictures for inspiration and then just take what I like the best out of multiple images and put them together into what I see and what I want to convey in the painting. As I continue working on this first layer, I move from the palette knife to a little more brushwork and blending in the background colors, kind of dabbing colors on and varying my brush strokes to create some movement and texture later. I don't want the paint too thick. I don't want too many details right now. So in certain places, you'll see me kind of remove some of the excess paint either with the palette knife or just by blending in with the brush. So again, it's really more for me in this first layer about getting the basic structure of the painting down, getting the colors, kind of that base layer of color the way I want it, and just beginning to start to create some depth and interest in what will be my focal points later. So as I move to the cross, I go back to using the palette knife to kind of lay down the color and then also give it a little bit of dimension. So at this point in the painting, I decided I really didn't like the size and shape of the raven, so I made some changes. I've discovered over time that when you're creating your own art, whether it's a drawing, a painting, whatever it may be, it's okay to make changes at any point in time. And so even though in the reference photo, the raven's much smaller, and in my initial sketch, he's smaller, I actually wanted the raven to really be the focal point of the painting and to be more prominent. And so I made him bigger. I just used that mid-gray color to redefine the sketch and that base layer and make sure that it's where I want it to be going forward. So it's always okay to change your mind, even as you're working. You don't have to stick to the reference photo. You don't have to stick to your initial sketch. You can definitely make changes as you go. I'm now moving into the second layer, or what I would call the second layer of my painting. I let that initial layer dry a little bit before I go back and make some changes and start adding a little bit more to it. So in this second layer, I'm looking to add more color, more texture, and just kind of work on it one area at a time to bring out all the details. So I'm starting with the sky, and you'll see me kind of dab on different colors, move the paint around to create some texture. I want the sky to retain that very misty, overcast, kind of dreary feel of the reference photograph. For the second layer of the raven, I'm using smaller brush strokes to give the appearance of feathers. I'm working my way through the painting step by step, the cross, the grass, to add texture, to add color. These layers are really what give the painting depth and interest, and I use the texture to help convey the feeling of the painting. So for the bird, I want the texture of the bird to be different than the texture of the cross. So I use different brush strokes. I move the brush in different directions. I use different amounts of paints. I will also use in some areas liquid mixed in with the paint, which is just a medium to help kind of smooth out, thin out the paint a little bit. I don't use that as much as I work through the layers, but in the second layer, there are areas that are smoother, like the grass or the background. I add a little bit of medium to the paint to smooth it out just a bit. In this second layer of the grass, I'm using the fan brush to add some darker colors on top of the lighter colors from that first layer. It allows the color from the first layer to show through. So with this fan brush, I'm varying the pressure that I put on the brush. So different amounts of paint will be distributed at different places in the canvas. And I'm not trying to cover the first layer completely. I want that light from the first layer to show through. That's going to help with this kind of misty, overcast feeling that I'm going for the overall painting. I'm adding more detail to the grass as I work my way to the front of the painting, because that's where you would be closest in the image, and so you'll see the most detail. You'll see that I smooth some areas out and I leave other places with more texture, just to make it look a little more natural, a little more realistic as I work my way through this second layer. Now I've let the painting dry for a couple of hours, and I'm beginning what I would call the third and final layer of the painting. I'm starting again with the sky, and I'm going to work my way forward. And I want to add some touches to the sky. So in this kind of drying time in between the layers, I typically will snap a few photographs of the painting. I'll take a look at it. Sometimes that helps me see things a little better than just staring at the painting in front of me. And I can see what's missing, what areas need more detail, what I want to add next. Just helps give me some direction for what I'm about to do. So I realized that I wanted to add a little bit of color, a little bit more on the sky, just kind of bring out that contrast. So I'm dabbing on some color, smudging it in with a dry brush to help blend. And I'm starting with the darkest gray, and then I move to the highlights. So varying the color, varying the pressure on the brush, and then again I use that dry brush to kind of blend it all together. in this third layer of the raven, I realized his legs got a little bit messy. So I'm going back in and just using that sky color to kind of clean up that area, make sure that stands out. I want the connection between the raven and the cross to really be defined, so I can't have his legs messy. So I'm going back through again, just kind of cleaning up that area. So how he's perched on the cross really kind of shows a connection between the raven and the cross. In the final layer of the cross, I'm adding some highlights to that left side. I'm imagining a little bit of light shining through from the back left, and so I want the cross to stand out. That also helps with creating some depth and dimension and interest in the painting. So just going through, adding some highlights, making sure there's enough contrast there, and to help give the impression of old stone that the cross is made out of. I'm going back through and adding a little bit more detail to the raven using this dagger brush, which has a variety of strokes that you can make with it. I like to use this for some really fine details, so I'm using it to make some long, thin brush strokes for long, thin feathers. I'm alternating between darks and lights to just give that final little pop to the raven and make him stand out. Working with wet oil paint on top of wet oil paint can sometimes be a pain. The paint moves around a little bit too much, and so then you kind of have to stop and regroup and clean off your brushes, clean up the area that you're working in. So that happens to me quite a bit. So you'll see me kind of just going through and cleaning up some areas. I'm also adding some touches of red, very little details that I hope people will notice, especially up close. It draws the eye in to the eye of the raven and also to his mouth and his talons. When you're far away, you don't almost even see it, but then up close, I'll show you an up close image of the raven's eye to give you an example. It's so little, and that's the only red that I've used in the whole painting. So I've really saved that for those final little touches just to really draw you in to where I want your attention to be in the painting. Now I'm adding some final details to the grass in the foreground. I want to lay down a little bit lighter green that's going to showcase the taller grass that's at the base of the cross. So I do that first and just kind of smudge in some of that lighter green color. And then I'm using the palette knife to go through and add those final, sharper, crisper pieces of grass that are right at the base of the cross so that they stand out and again create some depth and dimension in the painting. As I finish up, for all of my paintings that are done on a canvas like this that have a gallery wrapped edge, I will paint the edges. So in this painting, I'm using black just to complement the overall painting and not take away from it. I want that kind of finished look so that someone who ends up with the painting can either hang it directly as is, or of course it could still be framed. So if they're not initially framed, then I do always paint the edges. And where I decide to put the signature really just depends on the painting. If it's appropriate on the front, I'll put it on the front bottom right-hand corner, usually. Sometimes I'll use the left-hand corner, just depending again on the composition of the painting. And on this painting in particular, I sign it on the bottom right on the gallery wrapped edge. With the tall grass and the very sharp edges created with the palette knife, a signature would just detract from that. So the signature off to the side just makes more sense for this painting. I really hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please hit the like button and subscribe. As I continue to grow my channel, all of those things make a huge difference. And if you have specific comments or questions, please feel free to reach out to me in the comments down below, or also you can reach me on Instagram, Facebook, or my website. All those links are in the description down below. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for watching.